everyone, Maki here. Are you enjoying GQuuuuuuX? This time, let's take a closer look at what was said in the talk show with the voice actors. We have Ms. Tomoyo Kurosawa, who voices the main character of Moti Yuzuri-ha, and Mr. Shinji Kawada, who voices Sharia Bull. From their conversation, we might get some fascinating insights into the world of GQuuuuuuX and hints about what's coming next in the story. Just a small warning, this discussion contains spoilers for episode 1 and the beginning. If you'd prefer to avoid spoilers, be sure to watch episode 1 and episode 2 before checking out the show. Now, let me make a quick announcement. On my channel, I'm inviting people who want to support my activities to become members. For 99 cents a month, you get a name badge and special stamps for comments. Alright, let's dive into the content of the talk show. Ms. Kurosawa seemed genuinely surprised by the complexity of the world of the Gundam series. Mr. Kawada also commented they built an entire world. Creating a world with its own culture and history is truly remarkable. I imagine the setting is being handled by someone who has studied the history and culture of the real world in depth. So what aspects of episode 1 show this deep commitment to history, culture, and world building by the staff? You can actually see it in the train route map that Amati uses. The station names on this map fall into two distinct cultural groups. Names like Yok, Meteor's Court, Outwick Knightsbridge Gloucester, and Hammersmith appear on the map. From what I've researched, these are all based on place names in the UK or London. On the other hand, there are also names like Kokembara, Jingamine Ifuyao, and Neinokuni. These are related to the birthplace of director Kazuya Tsurumaki, as well as places found in Japanese mythology. On Site 6, you'll find station names from both of these cultural spheres. And interestingly, they are not mixed together. They are divided into two separate blocks. This tells us that Site 6 is a place where both British and Japanese communities have settled. What about the conditions in the slums? You see people sitting on the ground, tangled power lines everywhere, and then crowded streets. In the slums, you will see signs in English, Chinese, Korean, and other languages. Here's an important point to remember. Writing systems and cultures don't determine people's social status. The slums are described as places built by war refugees. The fact that British and Japanese communities live in clean and comfortable areas is nothing more than a coincidence. It could have been the other way around. Of course, one possible reason could be that the Site 6 government successfully negotiated with the Principality of Xi'an and the Earth Federation. But for the people living there, what happened is simply the result of luck, no more, no less. What is the reason for this situation? We will look at it in the next block. The immigration policy of the Earth Federation government was extremely draconian. From here on, I'm going to use the original Universal Century story. There's a chance that GQuuuuuuX will reveal a different version of events in the future, so please keep that in mind. Earth's environment had suffered catastrophic damage due to its massive population. To address this, the Earth Federation government was formed as a powerful organization and began a push for space colonization. Because of the extremely corrosive methods used, many space immigrants came to deeply distrust the Earth Federation. In the case of Site 6, it appears that people of Japanese and British descent were forcibly relocated there. Other colonies were assigned to people of various backgrounds, American Chinese, and so on. The locations to which people were moved were decided entirely by the Earth's Federation government. Ordinary civilians weren't allowed to choose where they would live. When the war broke out, many colonies were heavily damaged. Refugees then fled to Site 6, one of the few colonies that suffered relatively little damage. That's the situation we see on Site 6 today. The military police of Site 6 treat the refugees with extreme brutality. And the refugees, in turn, harbor the resentment toward the military police. While the real culprits behind this suffering are the Earth's Federation and the Principality of Zion, the people direct their hostility at the others right in front of them. This is a symbolic representation of the kind of division the war creates. Director Maki has said that authenticity and falsehood are key themes in the story. The residents of Site 6 and the refugees are in truth companions who should be united by common suffering. But because of the harshness of their lives, they've come to hate each other. Perhaps we can call this a kind of false anger. By focusing on the intricately crafted world building that impressed both Ms. Kurosawa and Mr. Kawada, we can gain a much deeper understanding of the world of GQuuuuuuX. In the talk show, the cast also discussed parts of the story, but they seemed careful not to give away any spoilers, so they avoided speaking too directly. The scene where Maki activates GQuuuuuuX is particularly striking. She says, "I'm not really sure, but somehow I understood." It's a vague and intuitive sort of line. Nevertheless, both Ms. Kurosawa and Mr. Kawada had something to say about it. By the time this program was recorded, she had already recorded all her lines up to the last episode. In other words, she knew how the story would end. She said this line from Almaty is done with very clever direction. Instead of spelling everything out, it expresses something deeper without explicitly stating the reasons. When I watch that scene again, knowing the whole story, I can feel that it's a deeply important core moment. When I first recorded that line, I didn't know how the story would end. And that's why when I watched it again, I discovered something much greater. It was a comment full of emotion, while still being spoiler aware. Why was Almaty able to activate GQuuuuuuX? Her words, "I'm not really sure, but somehow I understood," seem to hold the key to what comes next. If you keep that line in mind as you watch the rest of the story, you might just discover something new. And then there's the closing sequence. Apparently, this was the first time the cast had seen it during the taping of the show. As voice actors, they don't always get a chance to see scenes that don't involve their own characters. Once again, they seemed genuinely surprised. What really made an impression on them was how close and happy Amati and Niran appear together. It's such a happy scene that it makes my heart ache knowing how the story unfolds, said Ms. Kurosawa. Since GQuuuuuuX is still part of the Gundam series, we can expect a very serious story to unfold. Of course, it's unlikely that Amati and Niran will remain cheerful, friendly, and happy from beginning to end. For the voice actors, who already know the painful tragedies that await the main characters, this ending sequence must have looked especially moving and fresh. And then there's the fact that Shuji doesn't appear in the ending. They commented on that as well. Ms. Kurosawa remarked Conchi is there, but Shuji isn't. To which Mr. Kawada quietly replied that we are not supposed to say that. What kind of relationship do Shuji and Kanchi really have? This also seems to be an important point in the story. The red Gundam that appeared in episode 1 destroyed the military police's Zoku in an instant and even held the upper hand against the latest Zeon weapon, the GQuuuuuuX. However, the red Gundam that appears later fights against Zokas that are involved in clan battles. It is also unnatural that the red Gundam, which can easily defeat trained soldiers, is unable to defeat a Zoku in an instant. Compared to the GQuuuuuuX, the Zoku is an older mobile suit. On top of that, they are not even maintained with proper military equipment. So it seems strange that the red Gundam that was able to defeat Ixubi's GQuuuuuuX would have such a hard time against a Zoku. Could it be that the red Gundam in episode 1 was piloted by someone other than Shuji? Or maybe Shuji himself has some kind of hidden ability, or maybe even a hidden side to his personality. It's possible that Kanchi is involved in this mystery as well. Finally, let's talk about the opening lyrics of the title song, Prismer. It starts with the line, "If I hadn't stopped in front of that gate and just kept walking." It really feels like a symbolic reference to the moment when Amati and Miran first meet. Miss Kurosawa also commented on this part, choosing her words very carefully. She said with a thoughtful tone, why did she end up in front of Amati? Amati, after colliding with Niran, ends up falling over. A little later in the scene, we see that a piece of mobile suit software has landed in Amati's pocket. This moment also feels a bit unnatural. Would it really be possible for the piece to end up in Amati's bag at that angle of impact? Was she walking around with her bag unzipped at all? When Amati steps off the train, her zipper is clearly shown to be fully closed all the way to the end. So the whole part that ends up in her bag event seems odd. It looks like even the way Amati and Niran met might be hiding some deeper, important meaning. There's so much more to look forward to in the upcoming episodes. Thank you for watching to the end. See you next time on the show.